strapped in and hanging on because this video is going to be fully loaded with so much information covered, and probably one of the most important videos I've done all year. We are going to cover the rapture, we're going to cover the 3D to 5D shift, we're going to cover quantum mechanics and timelines and glitches and the Mandela effect. We are going to cover future predictions of when this is going to happen. I'm going to talk about how this is going to happen. I'm going to talk about what's going to happen to kids and pets. And we're going to talk about NPCs. It literally, we are going to cover so much, and I think I'm actually able to pull all of these concepts together into one solid picture for you so that you can walk away with full awareness on what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. It's going to be wild. I'm already getting full body chills. Like, my hair is already standing up on my arms. And yeah, hopefully this video isn't going to be like 3 hours long. I don't think it will be, because I can be pretty concise about this. All right, so two things I want to start with. One is the rapture. Let's talk about it, because very recently there was a lot of talk. Like, it was a viral trending topic back in September, just a couple of months ago, and it was hashtag rapture talk, and everyone was talking about the rapture. So let's talk about that first, and then let's talk about timelines, because they are actually the same thing. So it's interesting to tie these concepts together. And of course, it ties into spirituality, but it also ties into quantum mechanics, and it's pretty badass. So let's just go ahead and do some weaving here with you all. So the rapture, essentially, it is a biblical concept. Christian, Catholics, whatever. Some people believe in it, some people don't. Obviously, people who are very religious tend to believe in the rapture. So essentially, what is the rapture? It is the belief that at some point in time, and don't quote me on this because I'm definitely not a religious scholar and I do not follow any religion, but I believe, if I were to define it, it would be the belief that Jesus is coming back, or that, yeah, I think it's the belief that Jesus is coming back, and that anyone who believes in God or believes in Jesus essentially like leaves the planet to go join God and Jesus. So if you're a believer, then you just like, I think the Bible quotes it as like disappearing or leaving to go join sort of that holy side. And then essentially people who believe that they're going to be a part of the rapture are the believers, right? And then they believe that anyone who's not a believer is going to be left behind. So back in September, essentially how this viral topic got started is there was a priest out of Africa who had this sort of revelation, and God talked to him, and God said that the rapture was going to happen, I think on September 20th or 21st of 2025, something like that. And so honestly, from an outsider perspective, no judgment, but it was a little bit comical. People who really, really believed that they were going to leave, they were like selling off all their things. They were giving their car away, they were giving all their money away, they were selling off their assets because they truly believed that God or Jesus or whatever was going to pick them up, or they were going to move on to a different realm. I don't know. Like, once again, like, don't quote me on exactly how the rapture is going to happen, but that's the general belief, that the believers are going to leave and we are all stuck back here in hell because we don't believe. So how does that concept tie in with this timeline shift, right? This ascension, this spiritual awakening, this 3D to 5D movement that we are experiencing here? So oddly enough, there is a lot of overlap. And when you take a look at that, and I think that in some ways there is some truth to every religion, which I think deep down our soul knows and believes and feels. So because we feel some amount of truth within that religion, we kind of get hooked in, and then the rest of it is bullshit, but we're already hooked in at that point. And so there is a shift that is taking place on planet Earth. And like I always say, take this or leave this, believe me or not. If it resonates with you, it's for you. If not, that's okay too. This is what I've seen as an objective remote viewer. All the information that I have gathered and received, I have received straight from the source. I do not do any external research on any of this information, okay? So in that way, I'm very ignorant in some ways, and in that way, I'm very sort of pure in that way, even though I'm limited by language. Okay, so I just had to put out that disclaimer. What I've seen and from what I've heard, especially from this organization of galactic beings, is that there is going to be a shift in vibrations on this planet, the ascension, the great awakening, whatever you want to call it. Now, obviously, it is taking place right now. Like, it's kind of difficult to explain. It's like there are many moments leading up to a pivotal moment. And so some people believe it's going to be more of a soft transition, and some people believe it's going to be like we get hit with a giant solar flare and then we all ascend in that moment, which would kind of be a rapture type moment. And with Jesus coming back, it actually can be interpreted as Christ consciousness is coming back. And if you can observe or interpret Jesus as really a higher dimensional being or an ascended master who was just able to tap into the frequency of unconditional love, then yeah, of course he was able to levitate or walk on water or create food out of nothing, because you can actually defy the laws of physics when you get to a vibration that is outside of this reality and this density. He was a higher density being existing in a lower density reality. And of course, the Bible was written 200 years after he died, which was technically kind of like 4 generations after Jesus died. Then, of course, they left out a lot and they misinterpreted a lot and they skewed it to be whatever they wanted. That's besides the point, okay? The shift is taking place on planet Earth. There's a vibrational increase. And back in 2011, when I first initially was asked to be a part of this, what was it? It was a meeting with the Galactic Federation with these beings that I had no idea who they were. They were talking about this moment of ascension and awakening, and how certain amount of people are going to move into a higher vibration, and then the people who were not awakened were not going to move into that vibration. I remember, I was like, 19 years old at the time? I remember getting out of that meeting, right? I had to study for an exam that night too, but I remember getting out of that meeting thinking to myself, every family member, every friend, every stranger, every student in all of my university classes are not going to ascend. They are not going to move on with me. Like, I am going to be alone in this new place. And that's how I interpret it. Obviously, so wrong, okay? I can happily say now that look at the internet. Like, look at the amount of people who are waking up, channeling higher dimensional beings, gathering access to information, having incredible experiences outside of their body. Like, compared to 2011, okay, we are in a very different place in a very short period of time. So it gives me hope, it really does. And we're gonna talk about who's gonna move on and who's not gonna move on and what that's gonna look like and how that's gonna play out. Because, and I have recently remote viewed it, there is going to be a moment. There is gonna be a moment, a very definitive moment where essentially the new Earth is now the dominant Earth and the old Earth no longer exists. And people who are not in the higher vibration are going to essentially not exactly move on to the new Earth. And it's funny because, I laugh at the people who believe in the rapture and Jesus and God and oh, that's so ridiculous. And what I'm saying is probably 10 times more ridiculous than what they're saying and what they believe in. So like I said, take everything with a grain of salt. This is just what I've received, but it is very vital, very important information. Even if you're just taking it as entertainment, fantastic. Come along the ride with me because it is pretty wild and it will get pretty wild. All right. So like I said, lots to talk about. I also have a drawing that I drew to kind of help you with the visualization on how this is going to take place. Okay, so let's talk about timelines. Let's talk about quantum mechanics for a second in a very easily digestible way. And this can all be backed up and proven by science, and I'm not going to bring up things like the observer effect and the double slit experiment and spooky action at a distance and string theory. I'm not going to bring up all the technical terms, but I will say that if you really were interested, just go ahead and step into that world a little bit and you'll see all the validation of what I'm talking about. Okay. Within quantum mechanics and within the nature of this reality, and I know this to be true, not because I studied quantum mechanics, but because as a remote viewer, I can see it all play out. I've seen a wall dissolve into individual atoms before, okay? So what I've observed is that there are an infinite number of timelines that currently exist, both at an individual and a collective level. And this is where it gets kind of tricky, and our brain, our linear brain, has a hard time wrapping our minds around it. At a collective level, say for example, it's like the butterfly effect. Butterfly flaps its wings and then there's a tsunami. And essentially they're all sort of connected. There are an infinite number of collective timelines here on planet Earth within our whole population. So there's a timeline where Donald Trump is not currently president, all right? That is a timeline that does and is currently existing right here, right now, okay? Bear with me. What has happened in recent years is that there's a divide, okay, in the vibration of individuals on this planet, which means that instead of an equal amount of infinite timelines that equally exist, there are a certain group of people that are observing, and it's the observer effect, so we create the reality we observe. There's a certain group of people that are observing one potential outcome for the collective reality for planet Earth, and there is another group of people that is observing a different outcome for the collective of planet Earth. Now before, it's like everyone was just doing their thing and no one was really focusing or observing or putting their attention on the collective in one way or another. It was kind of just chaos and random, and therefore all probabilities and possibilities existed and were on the table. But now, because we have polarity here, because we have a really big divide, because we have not 10,000 camps of people, but we have two main camps of people, we have a divide in the timeline and the possibility and the outcome of the planet. And the outcome is either a high vibrational outcome in this camp of people, let's call them the optimists, and we have an outcome that is the low vibrational group of people who are creating that outcome. Fear, guilt, shame, projection, attachment, materialism, greed, all of that is in this camp of people. Unconditional love, solutions to the environment, love for animals, love for each other, unity, equality, peace, harmony, all of that is in this camp of people. And then of course you got the weird in-betweeners, the people who don't really choose a side. And that little sort of, that group of people, okay, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. As the world divides, we find ourselves in one camp or the other camp, okay? And as you are in that camp, and you are observing the world as an absolutely terrible shithole of a place, or you're observing it as, wow, we're emerging into something new and beautiful and unique and exciting, we are creating those realities. Now, you can say right now at face value that the majority of the population on planet Earth is suffering, is in guilt and shame and attachment and judgment and projection and fear. You can absolutely say that the majority of people on planet Earth are in this lower camp. So why is it 50-50? How is that even possible? It's possible because, gives me full body chills, the smaller portion of people who are in this camp are observing consciously. And when you observe consciously, your observation, and I'm getting full body chills again, is worth 10 times more, and that's just a number I'm just arbitrarily throwing out, worth 10 times more than the sort of blissful ignorant observation of the fear group down here, if that makes sense. That's why in the Bible, there needs to be 144 people, I don't know, 144,000 people who are in this camp in order for the rapture to happen or whatever, Jesus to come back, right? And it's kind of true. It's like, we don't need that many people. I think it's probably more than 144,000, but in retrospect, maybe there was 144,000 based on the population of planet Earth back then. These days, we need more than that. But it's conscious observation, okay? Conscious co-creation. We don't need as many of us. So here's what's happening. The polarity is taking place, okay? I'm sure in your own individual life, you are finding that you are in a very different reality than the people who are right next to you, whether those be coworkers or friends or family members or neighbors, but it feels like you are living a different life. You are in a different world. And technically, within quantum mechanics, it's true. You're in a different timeline. So we're going to talk about who gets to transition, how the transition is going to happen, what that's going to look like, and essentially what's going to happen to the old Earth when we sort of move on from it. And it's fascinating, you guys. Okay, let's see. So most probable timelines, division of timelines, there are two main ones. All right, so let's talk about the end of one timeline. So here's what's going to happen. And like I said, just take everything with a grain of salt because I am talking about future things. And in a reality, a quantum reality, where all timelines and possibilities can and do exist, it's tough to say definitively this for sure is going to happen. So, with a grain of salt. But this is what I was given. This information is what I was given in 2011, and this information was very recently received again and validated in the last couple of months. Okay? The observation of the lower vibrational group of people is essentially going to create the end of the world. I know that sounds like a doomsday prophecy. It is. It is. It is and it isn't, but it is. The thought that the world is getting worse, we're all going to die. Nuclear war is upon us. Aliens are going to invade. Like whatever it is, that fear frequency is essentially going to collapse that timeline altogether. It's going to get so bad and so separate and so divided, and that old Earth is going to be so low vibrational that it is no longer going to exist. It's going to cease to exist, okay? There are a number of ways that that old planet will go away or implode. And let's not call it an old planet because we're not changing planets, we're changing timelines. We're changing frequencies. And this is where the Mandela effect and glitches in the matrix come in. And we'll talk about that in just one second. But in that timeline, okay, the planet will die, it will die off, okay? And those people who co-created that reality will go with it. And once again, stay with me here, okay? Because it does get complex, but I'm going to explain it in the easiest way possible. Here are the possible endings of that planet, that timeline, that 3D reality, okay? Here are the possible endings that I've remote viewed. So the most probable endings, okay, are going to be a nuclear war. Okay, nuclear war is really up there on the list, and a solar flare. But a solar flare so intense that it actually just immediately, it almost looked like a nuclear bomb went off, but it wasn't. It was such an intense solar flare that it almost evaporated the entire planet. So those are the two sort of highest probability endings on the list. Okay, nuclear war or a giant solar flare, a devastating solar flare. The other ones that I've remote viewed, the other possibilities to end that timeline would be a super volcano eruption, a giant earthquake, and we're talking giant earthquake, a comet and or meteor strike, or aliens. I love how I put aliens in there, but it's true. And I'm not going to get into this too much, but there are multiple groups of extraterrestrials who do not want us to ascend, who do not want us to move forward. And because of that, they have plans as well to essentially, if they can't have this planet and they can't have us and our resources, then they don't want us to exist at all, if that makes sense. So they would take us out. That is the end of one timeline. So let's talk about the shift over to a new timeline. Let's talk about when this is going to happen. Let's talk about who gets to shift. Like it's absolutely fascinating. Before I get to all of that juicy information, a couple of just announcements. One, I've got my anxiety book that is currently out for pre-order right now. I just recorded the audiobook of that. So you can also pre-order the audiobook as well. And it's everywhere: Walmart, Target, Simon & Schuster, Amazon, of course. It's called Your Anxiety is Giving Me Anxiety. If you buy the book right now on pre-order, and some of those websites might be having a sale on it right now, and you screenshot that order, the receipt, and you email that over to us, then we will send you an anxiety survival kit, which is epic. It has 12 videos, a 24-page workbook, all on anxiety, and that'll hold you over until the book is actually shipped to you, okay? So please keep that in mind. Also, we have a Black Friday sale on right now, 33% off everything. It started yesterday for members only, and then in a couple days, it'll be open to the public. If you're not already a member of the website and you love this content, by signing up and being an awakener or creator, you get access to a ton of videos, okay? Creators get access to every single piece of content, video content I have on my website, which is probably well over 1,000, probably, 13 or 1,400 videos at this point. And then the membership is also 33% off for your first month as well. So if you're not a member and you want to check out the site and what I have to offer, sign up now. This is the perfect time to sign up. I also wanted to mention that if you want to know more about, am I in the third dimension or the fifth dimension? Am I in this camp or this bucket or this bucket? Like, how do I know? I have a workshop. It is an epic on-stage workshop presentation, absolutely incredible. It is called Shifting into the Fifth Dimension Workshop, all right? Once again, it's 33% off. So if you want to know more about what bucket, what camp you're in, then I deep dive into that. I have a quiz in there. I have a bunch of really cool things. So I highly recommend you check that out because I'm not going to cover who's in. All right, good. Yep, that was weird. All right, so let's move on. Shifting over into a new timeline. Okay, so how do I put this? What happens when one timeline, one collective timeline implodes, collapses, dies off? What happens? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Well, yeah. You just wake up and it's another day. You just wake up and it's another day. Now, we're shifting timelines all the time, okay? Like, for example, this morning I chose a cup of coffee over a cup of tea or over orange juice, for example, but all of those choices and all of those timelines exist. Do I remember all of the alternate choices that I made and the outcome of those alternate choices? No, I don't. Are we all going to remember when an old collective timeline shifts and that timeline dies off in nuclear war? No. However, there are going to be a large majority of people who, A, have this feeling of impending doom before it happens. We're going to see a lot of religious people, we're going to see a lot of spiritual people, all having dreams, revelations, conversations with God or angels or extraterrestrials, who are all going to be warning about this event that's going to take place. Okay? So people are going to have this weird feeling like something big is about to happen and they don't know what it is. And then after that event happens, we're all still going to wake up and exist in this reality and timeline, but there are going to be certain people who remember that old timeline and they're going to wake up and they're like, didn't we just die in a giant nuclear war? Didn't we just die in a giant solar flash? Like, what's going on? Okay? So just like the Mandela effect, just like Fruit Loops versus Fruit Loops, or Luke, I am your father versus no, I am your father, just like all of those weird glitches that we've already collectively observed, I believe that when that old timeline collapses, there is going to be a good amount of people that remember the death of that old planet. And that is how we are going to know that it happened. That is how we are going to know that we all survived. We are the glorious rapture population, and we have shifted into the new timeline completely, okay? You don't have to wait for the old timeline to die off in order to shift into the new timeline. Within quantum mechanics, they all exist simultaneously. So you can shift into that right now, okay? Don't wait. Don't wait. But be aware of the buildup of impending doom, which we're kind of already feeling, and also be aware of the Mandela effects around an apocalyptic event. The sort of the buildup towards an apocalyptic catastrophic event, and then the aftermath of certain people believing that it did happen, and then they woke up in a reality where it didn't happen, okay? It is going to be so freaking fascinating. So when do I see this happening? Now, it's hard to pinpoint like an exact day or an exact year, but there's sort of a reference point that I keep getting drawn back to, and this is sort of the reference point that came to me back in the day as well, which is between 2028 and 2036. It's a pretty wide window, but it's also a pretty short window in retrospect of all time. To narrow it down a little bit, this event is most likely to occur between 2030 and 2034. So remember, be aware of people talking about a catastrophic or an apocalyptic event. This is when that old timeline is going to shift. So don't have any fear around it, because guess what? You can hop into an infinite number of different timelines where that never actually happens. The end is never the end. We live in a quantum universe, all right? Keep that in mind. And if you keep your vibration high enough, you're just going to be in the timeline, and then you're going to still be in the new timeline, and like nothing's actually going to change for you. I actually believe that it's the people who are sort of in the middle right now who are going to remember the shift, the death of that old timeline, because maybe they were playing in that old Earth energy, and then and so let's talk about that. Let's talk about people shifting over from the old timeline to the new timeline. Like I said, if you're in this camp of people, the high vibrational camp of people who are kind of living your best life, you're learning a lot of lessons right now, you're getting very challenged, but you're making tough decisions that it's going to align to your highest good and highest vibration, okay? Doesn't mean life is all roses and peachy, but it does mean that you are feeling pretty damn grateful every single day. If you're in that gratitude vibration, you're in this bucket, which means that timeline-wise, you're just going to shift on over from the new Earth to the new Earth, and nothing's really going to change for you. I think the fear in a lot of people is, what's going to happen to my stubborn dad? What's going to happen to my ignorant neighbor? What's going to happen to, and I think people who are religious and believe in the rapture, they're worried about their, people who don't believe, and they're worried about their children or whatever. So what's going to happen with them? There are two things that could potentially happen. If someone is in the middle frequency, okay, they're in the middle. They're not here and they're not here. They're kind of floating. Like I said, that population is smaller and smaller these days, okay? They are most likely going to shift right on over to that new timeline. You do not have to believe in spirituality. You do not have to have the language. You do not have to freaking meditate 5 hours a day. You don't have to focus on gratitude to raise your vibration. All you have to do is be a good person. All you have to do is just have like a decent enough vibration to shift over. If you are so low, so stuck, so deeply rooted in fear, if you are in the trenches, if most likely none of you are, but you're going to know these people, greed, fear, materialism, attachment, it's the us versus them mentality, it's the service to self individuals, okay? Those people, they are not going to make it. But what does that mean? Okay, I've looked into this a variety of different ways. Like I said, infinite timelines, but the most likely one is this. Those people are not going to die. They're not all of a sudden, oh my goodness, there was like millions of people who just randomly died all over the world, and that must have been the rapture, and now we're living on heaven on earth or the fifth dimension. No, it's going to be way more subtle than that, and only the people who are really awakened are going to see it. How do I explain this? We are embodied in a soul. We are embodied in a physical form. Our soul, our energy body, is in this physical form. And what's really cool about the soul is that we're not just linear or singular or dualistic. That's why I don't really believe in twin flames. It's not one or the other. It's not two halves of a whole. It's quantum, it's infinite. As I'm existing as Elizabeth April right now, I'm also existing as a past life, as a future life, as an off-planet extraterrestrial, all at the same time. It's pretty wild when we sort of, take a look at that and blend our minds around it. So the way that I look at it is a soul fractal. So the more present you are in one timeline, the more of your soul you have gathered in this present moment, in this present timeline. How do you know how many soul fractals you have? Well, it's how present and how conscious you are during your day-to-day life. The more conscious and aware you are every single moment of the day, it's more likely that you have more of your soul fractals, more of your energy, being, and body into this body. There's no way, it's impossible to have every single part of your soul embodied in a human body. It's impossible because your soul is so grand and so high vibrational that our physical form literally could not handle it. And this is why it came up in the last, I believe, Galactic Federation meeting, that as we ascend and raise our vibration, we're going to eat less, we're going to sleep less, and we're going to have a lot more energy, right? So things are going to start to shift if they haven't already. And so, going back to soul fractals, what's going to happen is the individuals who are in such a low vibration and they are, let's say, 60% or more attached to and aligned to the third dimension or the old earth frequency. When that old earth collapses and dies off, their soul fractal is going to move on. So essentially, their soul fractal is going to go to the afterlife. And then in that afterlife, they get to choose what embodiment, what incarnation do you want that's going to align to the vibration of this soul fractal. Most likely their vibration isn't high enough to move on to the new earth or the fifth dimension or what have you, so they get to make a choice. So how does that work when that person, let's say your neighbor who's super negative, right? How does that work when that person doesn't actually die off in the higher timeline or higher frequency? This is where the concept of NPCs come in, non-player character. Now, I've remote viewed this before, and a lot of people talk about NPCs. Okay, so essentially an NPC is a body that doesn't have a soul in it. It's a part of the simulation. That person is a part of the computer program, and they don't actually have a soul, and they're just existing to give you lessons and to be a part of the background noise of this video game. I don't really believe in that concept. I believe that every living organism has a soul fractal in it. However, I do believe in the concept when it comes to how much of that soul is embodied in that incarnation. Okay? Okay. When we shift over to the higher frequency in the new earth, which you can do right now, by the way, you don't have to wait. The people who are not in that timeline collectively are all of a sudden going to exist as NPCs in your reality, because their soul fractals are existing elsewhere in alternate timelines, whether an alternate planet Earth timeline or an alternate timeline elsewhere. Therefore, they are not going to bother you anymore. So this is where I bring up my handy dandy chart. All right. Hopefully this makes sense. And if it doesn't, that's cool because you're here for a reason anyway. So here's a time, these are timelines, okay? Here's the fifth dimension timeline or the new earth timeline. You got a happy little stick figure over here. And here's the old Earth timeline or the 3D timeline. You got someone who's really sad and, you know, sort of selfish and whatever down here, okay? There's this bucket of people who are here. Here's what happens right now in this moment, and a lot of people are going through this. It is fucking hard to maintain a high density frequency right now. It is very, very hard to stay positive in the world that we're in right now because there's a lot of shit going on, and we are also being confronted by a lot of old stuff that we need to clear out. So what happens is it's hard. We have moments where we're up here and then we dip back down. Sometimes we dip all the way back down and then we're back up, okay? For the last at least 5 years, we've been dipping up and down, up and down, up and down, okay? So what happens is if you dip even halfway down into a lower frequency, you meet other people who are in this middle ground of a lower frequency. This is where a lot of battles happen. This is where you're thinking to yourself, does this person really believe this? Because I believe that the same reality, the same situation, the same is happening a completely different way. Okay? So when you're a little bit up and they're a little bit down, you're still involved in each other's collective reality. And this is where the battles happen of they want to bring you down into their perception and their vibration, and you want to bring them up, but typically you react out of negativity or fear and you dip into theirs, and then you're down here, and then you got to spike back up again, okay? When you are up here and solidly up here, you are not bothered by these people because the separation and polarity is so extreme. You are only going to be bothered by people when you dip down low enough to be in the middle and to be really confused by why someone else is living in the same world and perceiving it a completely different way. Does that make sense? Okay? Hopefully you're getting something out of this, all right? But that's where the concept of NPCs and non-player characters exist in. When you are in such a separate and removed density or timeline within quantum mechanics, there are certain people who are existing elsewhere and their soul fractals are elsewhere. That's why they feel like they're completely on autopilot, and they typically don't have the conscious awareness enough to even force their reality or their vibration on you because they're not even a part of that timeline that you're in. Whew, damn. All right. So let's talk about pets and kids, just because a lot of people are concerned about pets and kids. I want to say, and I've literally remote viewed this for the past 10 plus years now because I was concerned as well. I had 2 cats at the time when I received this information. I was like, oh my God, what about my cats? Are they going to shift? Yes. So both pets, so animals and children, okay, they have a neutral frequency. And if anything, not even just a neutral frequency, but a much higher frequency in general. Even if the animals or the children have experienced a lot of abuse, it's not necessarily a projection of a lower frequency collective timeline. Even those individuals will shift into a higher timeline. Like I said, you really just have to be a half decent person to shift. And I want to say one more thing. Yeah, what happens to those who don't? Okay, cool. Yeah, I went into that. One more thing I want to mention. A couple years back, I was meditating and I asked the question, if I were to summarize, and this is actually in my Shifting into the Fifth Dimension workshop, okay? So if you want to know if you're in the higher vibration, low vibration timeline or new earth, old earth, go check out my Shifting into the Fifth Dimension workshop, okay? It's literally only $22 on my website right now, and then with the 33% off, you really can't go wrong. Okay, a couple years ago, I asked a question. What is one thing that people need in order to shift into the fifth dimension, or the new earth, or a higher timeline, whatever that is, okay? What is the one thing? Now, if I was a religious leader or corrupt or whatever, I'd say, all of you need to know how to remote view, and you need to go check out my remote viewing workshop, my astral travel workshop, in order to shift. Or you need to read the Bible 10 times in order to be taken by the rapture. No, like that's all so wrong and so corrupt. Like I said, you don't even need to have a spiritual belief. You don't need to believe in the afterlife in order to shift into a higher timeline. There is one thing that came through. The one thing that all of us need to be willing to do in order to shift into a higher frequency. Can you guess what it is? It is kind of bizarre, but totally makes sense. Change. As long as someone is willing to change, they have the capacity and the ability to shift into a higher timeline. That is it. So who's stuck in that low timeline right now? People who are stubborn, people who are attached, people who have a lot of ego. So let me pose it to you right now. Let me put this out to my community because I fucking love you and I care about you and I want to make this change and shift together. What in your life right now are you being prompted to shift and change that you are resisting? You may think that changing that thing in your life is going to be detrimental, is going to be hard, that you're going to lose a lot of money, that you're going to lose a lot of friends, that you're going to lose a lot of family support in doing so. What are you resisting changing that you're being prompted to change right now? And I don't know about you guys, but in the past couple of years, man, I have changed everything. Almost everything. Luckily, my mission still remains, but change. You have to be willing to change. As long as you have that flexibility, then you always have an opportunity to shift. And if you guys feel, and I doubt it, but if you feel really stuck in this camp, in this lower timeline and old earth and 3D frequency, then I actually do have a course. It is like a baby that I birthed. It is one of the best things that I've ever put out there. It's called Shifting into the 5D Shift. Oh my God, what is it called? Oh, Shift Masterclass, sorry. It's called the Shift Masterclass 2.0. And it's an 8 to 16 week program. I hold your hand through shifting from the third dimension into the fifth dimension. I put my heart and soul into that course. It is the most expensive thing on my website, okay? For a good reason, because it is jam-packed. But if you are truly stuck, I do have that resource for you, okay? Other than that, I believe you can do it all on your own. Like I said, you don't need to meditate 5 hours a day to do so. I believe in you guys. I love you so much. I hope this video explained a lot. I know it was a lot. You might have to watch it again. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Head over to my website for 33% off everything and to check out all of my offerings, because I believe that I am here to give you knowledge, and I believe that that knowledge is going to unlock parts of your DNA so that you can step into a position where you can do what I do, and that we are all gathering access to the same information. I hope that one day I am out of a job because you know everything I know, because you're gaining access to it all by yourself. That is my end goal. Knowledge will empower us and knowledge will set us free. All right? So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to give information. Take it or leave it. That being said, I will see all of you in the highest possible timeline. Bye for now.